Okay, let's try and unpack this. Imagine this scenario: a disputed sky.
Mm-hmm.
You've got two major players standing, on opposite sides, but both claiming they have total control over the exact same critical airspace.
Yeah, it's like you said, two teams claiming they won the same game.
Exactly. But they're describing completely different games,
Mhm.
different fields, different realities even. It's pretty bewildering, and that's what we're diving into today.
And what's really striking, I think, is how recent this is. We're talking sharp, really contrasting claims about air superiority between Iran and Israel.
Right.
So our mission here for this deep dive is really to unpack those specific claims, understand what each side is actually saying.
And navigate the differences, which are,
Such
significant.
huge differences. And look, this isn't about taking sides. It's about understanding the information, the sources we have, and what that information might reveal about the current situation.
Absolutely. And this reported air war, it seems to have kicked off around June 13th.
That's the time frame, yeah,
Yeah.
that led to mutual airstrikes, sadly, casualties too.
And this massive deployment of air defense systems, right? Which even had knock-on effects like impacting global security, closing some airspace in the Middle East for a time.
Definitely. And then you get to the core claims, which are just fundamentally opposed.
Yeah, Iran's saying it controls Israel's airspace.
While Israel asserts dominance over Iran's airspace.
It sets up this central puzzle.
Uh-huh.
And I think looking at it through the lens of maybe an information competition might help us make sense of it.
That's a good way to put it, because beyond the obvious contradiction, it's how each claim sort of redefines the entire battlefield.
How so?
Well, think about it. If Iran really controls Israeli airspace like they claim, what does that imply about, say, conventional air defenses? Are they obsolete?
Right. Good point.
And conversely, if Israel genuinely controls Iranian airspace, why isn't Tehran directly addressing that specific claim? There's a kind of silence there. It just highlights this huge gap in the narratives, makes it incredibly hard to pin down the definitive truth right now.
Especially when both sides are using their state media channels pretty effectively to push their own version of reality.
Exactly, projecting their own reality.
So, okay, let's start with Iran's perspective then. What are our sources telling us about their claim?
Well, the main claim comes from Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. They've stated they've completely taken control of Israel's airspace.
Completely. That's a strong word.
It is, and their key piece of evidence, the thing they're pointing to, is the successful strike by their Fatah-1 hypersonic missile.
The Fatah-1, right?
They're asserting this missile was so advanced it was, and quote, undetected by radar or tracking systems.
Undetected.
And because of that, they claim Israel's airspace was effectively rendered inactive.
Wow. Okay, so the undetectable part is crucial here.
Absolutely critical. It's not just a technical detail. It's positioning Iran as having made this major technological and strategic leap.
Because if it's true,
If it's true, a hypersonic missile that can evade radar just bypasses most current air defense systems. That gives Iran an unprecedented ability to strike targets. Israel wouldn't even see it coming, according to this claim.
and this is being pushed through their state media, like TASS, for example.
Yes. Sources like Tatas have reported this Iranian claim. It aims to sort of rewrite the rules of engagement.
But, and this is important, Israel hasn't officially confirmed this, right? No acknowledgement of this specific missile strike or their airspace being taken over this way.
Correct. So far, no official Israeli agency has acknowledged that specific claim about the Fatah-1 rendering their airspace inactive. No updates, no reactions on that particular point that we've seen in the source.
Okay, so that's Iran's narrative.
Yeah.
Control via advanced undetectable missile tech. What about Israel's counter-narrative? What are they saying about Iran's airspace?
Well, according to the sources we have, figures like Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, I think there was a news clip around June 16th. He commented that the Israeli Air Force, the IAF, has, in fact, occupied Iranian airspace.
Occupied. So that's not defensive. That's assertive, proactive dominance.
Exactly. It's an offensive claim. And what lends some weight to this, or at least context, is that strategic analysts cited in our sources seem to lean towards Israel having achieved air superiority.
And why is that? What's their reasoning?
They point to what they describe as the widespread destruction of Iran's air defense systems.
Ah, okay. So not just hitting targets, but systemically taking out their ability to defend their own skies.
Precisely. That would imply sustained aerial operations degrading Iran's response capability. It suggests a very active physical dominance achieved in the air.
But again, the flip side, Iran hasn't directly responded to this specific claim about their airspace being occupied.
Not directly, no. Not according to the sources we're looking at. And that silence, or, the lack of a direct rebuttal on that point, raises questions. Why wouldn't you counter such a significant claim about your own territory?
Yeah, that silence really does amplify the discrepancy, doesn't it?
Massively.
Because when you put these claims side by side, Iran, we control Israel's skies. Look at our Fatah 1 missile. Our state media says so.
Right.
Israel, no, we control Iran's skies. Our PM said so. The IAF is active. Look at their damaged air defenses.
And the gap between those two positions, our sources are suggesting something like an 80 to 90% difference in the claims.
80 to 90%, that's not just a disagreement. That's almost two separate realities.
It really is. If you try to map it out visually,
Yeah.
Side A, Iran, citing sources like Ayar Mer, Terror S, claims total control over Israeli airspace, key evidence Fatah 1.
Okay.
Side B, Israel, via statements from Netanyahu, the IAF claims control over Iranian airspace, citing outcomes like destroyed air defenses.
It just shows this fundamental divergence. It's not a minor detail they're disagreeing on. It's who controls the sky.
Exactly. A critical military domain.
And, okay, while these specific air superiority claims are, let's say, heavily disputed, the wider conflict is undeniably real. The sources do mention impacts, right? Like attacks on Iranian centrifuges.
Yes, that's highlighted. Targeting centrifuges, which are obviously vital for their nuclear program, that indicates something is happening, some kind of aerial or intelligence operation achieving strategic effects, even if the overarching control claim is murky.
And there are other consequences, too. Evacuations, security alerts.
That's right. The sources mention the evacuation of about 1,000 Indian students and minorities from Iran, plus heightened global security, those temporary closures of airports and airspace in the Middle East we talked about.
So the real-world fallout is clear, even if the air dominance picture isn't.
Undeniable. And this really brings us back to that idea of an information competition.
Yeah. Explain that a bit more.
Well, without independent, verifiable media reports, which are very hard to come by in this situation, it's incredibly difficult to confirm whose claim is closer to the truth.
So it's not just a military fight, but a fight over the narrative.
Absolutely. It's a strategic challenge for anyone trying to understand the conflict. Each side is clearly using its state media channels to shape perceptions, to project its own version of reality. Finding that objective picture of who actually controls the air, it's extremely challenging right now.
So, okay, bringing this back to the listener.
Yeah.
What does this all mean for you, trying to make sense of this? You see these headlines, these claims.
Well, I think it means you have to be incredibly cautious. When you have two significant nations, major players, offering such completely different versions of reality about something as critical as military air control, it just underscores the challenge of finding clear truth in these really complex, high-stakes situations.
It forces you to ask, what does it even mean when the battlefield isn't just physical ground, but also this contest of narratives? Who's winning the information war?
Exactly. And maybe that leads to the final thought to leave people with.
Okay.
In this era, information travels instantly, but facts, independently verified facts, can be really scarce, especially in conflict zones.
So how do we, just as informed people trying to understand the world, how do we navigate that? How do we make sense of these profoundly conflicting stories coming from major geopolitical actors?
Right. What does this whole idea of a disputed sky actually teach us about how truth itself works or maybe doesn't work in times of conflict?
Perhaps it teaches us that sometimes the battle isn't just for territory, but for the control of reality itself.